everybody. On behalf of Authority Magazine, it is my pleasure to welcome today with us Adwait Joshi, the founder and CEO of DataSeers, a company that was founded in Atlanta, Georgia, and now has grown to more than 100 employees globally in how many? Less than or fewer than 5 years? Is that correct, Adwait?
About 5 years now, yeah.
Excellent. Congratulations on your success. So let's dive in. Instead of me telling people who you are, tell us a little bit about your background story and what has brought you to this point of your life today.
Absolutely. So like you said, Adwait Joshi, I'm originally from Mumbai, came here to go to school upstate New York, got my master's in data science. Back in the day, we didn't have data science, so it was just data engineering. Worked in a lot of different industries and found my passion and love towards financial services. I felt like my unique background in data and my background in, understanding the business use cases forced me to basically create this company and solve some real world problems for our customers, such as fraud, compliance issues, detecting, patterns in data that can lead to human trafficking, drug trafficking, and I'm able to identify such scenarios so that people can find these instances and report them and make a difference.
What keeps you going and excited and motivated and fueled to keep going?
Yeah, so, one of the things that people like, I always tell young kids who join us, they always give us a feedback. And we have found that if you give them a project which finishes and they see instant results in front of them, they get excited and they want to do more versus, you're doing something with no goal in mind, no end in mind. People tend to get boring. So one of the good things that we do is we can instantly see results. The moment the data is fed into our application, you can immediately see the issues or immediately see the problems. And so what ends up happening is people like that. People appreciate that. And we certainly appreciate that. And that keeps us more excited and makes us going on and on and on and creating more things so that we can help our customers with different issues that they deal with day to day.
How do you do? So you're an entrepreneur, and I assume there are bumps on the roads. There are those exciting times when things go great. How do you handle those moments where you're challenged with something that doesn't go your way?
Well, it's hard, right? So we get challenged every single day. There is not a single day in an entrepreneur's life where you're not challenged because we are going through a different day. It's a different day every day, right? So some days, we call it that end up kicking our butts, and next day, it's back to normal, right? Life has to go back to normal. And so when we are challenged, we are forced to find creative solutions. One of the things that I like to do is if you challenge me about something once, I'm going to find the solution so that you don't have to challenge me about the same issue again. And what that ends up happening is it ends up reducing the amount of challenges that you face as time goes on. And the challenges that you do face are truly unique and truly new. And obviously that's why you have mentors, because whatever challenge that you're facing, I'm pretty sure that somebody else has faced and solved. So it's very important to create a network of mentors and trusted advisors and such where you can talk to them and get advice from them. So one of the things that you have to do as an entrepreneur is be open to listening to other people and getting their feedback.
And speaking of those people's mentors, people who cheer you, who support you, who inspire you, is there anybody that is worth mentioning who, inspires you, cheers you, and is there for your side when things are great and when things are not so great?
Absolutely. And there are many people, right? If I start naming one by one, we won't have enough time, but, and it depends on different things. One of the things that I have seen that I very early in my life was inspired by my parents because they were business people, business folks, both my father and mother, and they wanted me to keep going. They basically asked me to do what I wanted to do and not hold myself back. So obviously that's a big opportunity. Not everybody is lucky enough where parents can give you such an opportunity. So I was obviously motivated by them. My father is 74 years old now, and he's still working, he's still doing things. And because he's like, as long as my brain works and my body works, I'm going to keep on doing this, right? So that's an inspiration in itself. And then, in our professional environment, I have worked for and met a lot of people who have taught me very unique things. And so it depends upon what you take from each person, right? Because a lot of folks will give you advice. The same person may give you good advice and bad advice at times, but it's up to you to recognize when that advice makes sense and when that advice doesn't make sense. And when it doesn't make sense, then who else do you go to, right? Because what you're looking for is a quick validation. Am I doing this right or wrong? And if I'm doing it wrong, what is the right way to do it? But depending on one person to have all the answers, it's practically impossible, right? So because we are all people, we all make mistakes and we all have our flaws. So there is a lot of different people that I reach out to depending upon what I'm looking for, whether it's a finance issue, whether it's a data issue, whether it's a business issue, whether it's a banking issue, whether it's an IT issue. And so if I were to name one person that I look for advice in a lot of times, right, these days is the eternal force, the force of the nature, because sometimes, you just sit there and think about, how to solve this problem. And 9 times out of 10, the solution comes to you in some form. It may be through a friend, it may be through a mentor, but the solution manifests itself. So that's, I think, one of the key things to is if you're seeking for the solution will come to you.
And I love that you brought that up, because that brings up the topic of intuition. And I think as an entrepreneur, you do have to learn to trust your intuition. Can you talk a little bit about that, the importance of intuition on your journey to success?
Absolutely. It's important to recognize what feels right and what is right, or what feels wrong and what is really wrong. Because sometimes, it's not always a 1:1 equation. Your intuition tells you one thing and another thing happens all the time. But sometimes your intuition does tell you something and that's the exact thing that happens, right? So as more time goes by, we start listening to our intuition more and more, which is what we call as experience, which is why it's important that you have been in the industry for a while, right? That's a difference between, a young kid, a child, grabbing something from the street and putting it in their mouth and then being sick for the next 10 days versus an adult grabbing something from the street and eating it. You're not going to do it because your gut feeling is that it's going to, hurt you or harm you or make you sick. So as you see these things, right, your intuition keeps getting better and better and better as you grow older, because you're seeing more, you're seeing the world, you're seeing different elements come out. And I think that's the key to being successful as an entrepreneur, is do what feels right, but what you do may not always be right. And so you have to react to it as well, because it felt right at the moment, but doesn't feel right anymore. So, there's no place for an ego. So you have to put your ego aside, react, change, and move on, because ultimately you want to win, not lose.
You bring up so many excellent points that I want to follow up on the ego. Let's talk about ego and entrepreneurship. What is your experience of the ego trying to speak to you loudly and you having to silence that to move forward on your path?
Well, most people who are entrepreneurs have some sort of an ego. The reason why they become entrepreneurs is because at the end of the day, they feel that whatever problem that they are trying to solve is not being solved correctly in the world. And so they feel that they're unique, they're special, they're different. But there is a time and a place to turn that ego more into confidence or, chutzpah, where you're not arrogant, you're not egoistic, but you're confident and you're practical, right? And that slide and that meter is very small and very slippery. So sometimes, what you want to be, where you want to be confident, can come across as arrogant or egoistic. So when you're working with so many people of different, intellects and different ages and different, races and different genders and so on and so forth, your egos are going to clash with somebody. At that point of time, the advice that I give people is this: you may not have to agree upon everything. Has to be your way or the highway. What you have to think through is what makes sense for the situation in which you are. In the professional situation, it is all of us are trying to make the company succeed. So even if it doesn't make sense for me personally to do something, but it makes sense for the company, it's about the company. It's not about my personal ego. It's about the company. And so we try to teach that to younger kids is, you reach a state of career or you reach a state of life where, it's not, the ego doesn't make any sense. Like I tell all the people that work here, when you reach my state, there is no point in playing politics. Just be direct. You just tell people that, okay, you know what, I don't like this. This doesn't make any sense. Rather than saying yes to them and then saying no later on, blah, 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 because it just doesn't work. So that's key to understand where to draw the line and where not to become overly egoistic and try to become egocentric.
Once again, excellent point. You brought up boundaries, not directly, but through what you said, learning to say no and being direct and stating the way things are for making the best decision for the company. Talk about the importance of boundaries and how do you teach your employees to set up healthy boundaries so that they can grow as people and the company can be successful?
Absolutely. It's a very important topic because in our company, we have people from many different countries, many different cultures, many different languages, many different geographical regions. And what ends up is the boundary is not a black and white line, right? Americans act very differently than Europeans, right? Our marketing person, Bobby, you know her, she's from Bulgaria, you're from Bulgaria. People in Europe are very direct. Sometimes, they say something and, an American might say, oh, they're rude. Well, they're not rude. That's how they speak. They speak to the point, they speak direct. They don't beat around the bush. And so where that boundary is set, you have to let other people know that this is where I put my wall up, right? And I'm not saying that you can't come into the wall, but you have to understand that when you're inside that wall, you are encroaching on somebody's, space. And while that may be okay in certain instances, in other instances, it's not okay. So being professional, setting that professional boundary, but also setting that boundary of we are all professionals, but we work with each other so much. A lot of people end up becoming friends. So when does that boundary become a little bit flexible, right? So this is my friend boundary, but this is my colleague boundary, or this is my boss is to, I may go drink beer with you after work, and I might be a completely different person, but when I'm here, I have to do what I need to do based on my role and my relationship with the rest of them.
Great. Let's switch gears and kind of go to the other direction of self-care. So you're a very successful entrepreneur. You have turned a company around pretty quickly into a global company from scratch with no outside investors. Once again, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Let's talk about what keeps you sane and how do you prioritize your well-being and the well-being of your employees so that you can keep growing forward?
Well, we are all insane. I am definitely insane in order to do this the way I'm doing it, right? So let's keep that part aside. But what keeps me sane is everybody has their own way of bringing back balance, right? So what that means is what connects you to yourself and to nature. We always look, I'm very spiritual. So my way of connecting back to nature and my way of connecting to myself is by music. I'm a professional musician. I was trained in Indian classical music. I play many different instruments. So that's what my calling is. So when I feel up or down, or, I just don't feel like it, I listen to my music. But for many people meditate. Some people exercise. Some people, you have to have an out, as they say, because there are moments where you're going to be frustrated at work because a client was, nasty and they said things that, got to you, blah, blah, blah. So in order to keep your sane, you have to, again, that boundary is important, saying that, well, my client can only affect me when I'm there. And, I listen to Sadhguru a lot, and he gives you a lot of advice on, practical real life things, right? And so keeping yourself sane is, just listening or looking at life a little bit differently than what most people look. Most people look at it from a very small pinhole. Whereas I look at it from a global thing. So one of the things Sadhguru says is, why do you drink poison and expect the other person to die? What he means by that is when people are upset, they're getting more and more upset about this other person because they said something and they are expecting that something's going to happen to that person, but nothing's going to happen to that person. Something's going to happen to you. So you are the one who is drinking the poison and expecting the other person is going to die. So you have to let go and you have to completely take a step back and say, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't affect me in any which way, shape, or form. And that's how you kind of come back to your senses. So for me, it's music. My music tag is mystic musician. So I am a little bit of mystic in that way. And that's why I connect with Sadhguru a lot. But some people meditate. And that's a very important form. One of my very close friends here in Atlanta, they have a huge meditation group called the Heartfulness Foundation. And they all meditate as a group, they meditate individually, and that's what helps them connect to themselves, because it's a quiet meditation, no sound, nothing whatsoever. You're completely relaxed. And so what helps you keep your sanity depends from person to person. Some people may like to listen to Cardi B, other people may like to meditate, but that's what resets your chakras in a way, right? It brings you back. Some people might say, well, I want to go to Sedona and reset back, right? There is a vortex and that affects me. Depends upon who you are and what affects you. You have to find it in yourself.
What do you say to people who say, I don't have time for self-care?
If you don't have time for yourself, then you don't have time for anything else, because you have to spend time for you. If you are held in Hindi, we actually have a saying. I'll say it and then I'll explain it. It says, Sar Salamat to Pagdi Hazar, which means if your head is intact, you can wear 1,000,000 hats. But if your head is not intact, you can't wear a hat. So that's where self-care, if you don't spend the time that you need to spend making sure that you are okay, you can never give up even close to 100% or even 80% to somebody else. So it's very important. And again, you have to find what drives you. Like they have a dog in most schools now, and they bring that dog out where kids get to play with them. And that brings them back to reality, saying, oh, wow, this was amazing. It's a therapy dog. And so whatever it is, you have to find it and you have to spend time. You can't be going 24/7, 365, because that only gets you so far.
All right. What would be your 3 tips, practical, easy tips to do something for yourself from your perspective? No writing.
My perspective for other people?
Yeah.
All right. So take a step back. Always take a step back. If you take a step back, you can actually lunge much more forward. What that means is take a pause, take a break, look at it from outside the box. Don't be inside the box, right? Don't ever give up. So don't take no for an answer. Don't ever give up. You have to try. That is actually one of our most important pillars is perseverance. You have to try. And third is do something crazy. Do something that nobody can ever dream of, right? That's also one of our pillars, which is innovation, right? So if you look at it, we would not have a light bulb today. We would not have electricity if, these folks did not try so many times and did not try something that I'm pretty sure at the time people thought, and even today, some people say Tesla was crazy. But if it was not for Tesla, we wouldn't be here today, right? And Edison and, some of these other folks, we wouldn't be here today. So those are my 3 tips that I'll give people.
Okay. And what's a favorite quote of yours to end this week?
So that goes back to the 3 tips I gave. So one of my most favorite quote is, heights attained by great men did not come in a sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upwards in the night. So that means that when you're sleeping, somebody else is doing something to eat your lunch. So, don't give up, keep doing something always, and do things when others are not watching so that you can get further along.
Grow. Excellent. I appreciate your time, Adwait. If people would like to follow you, where can they find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. AA Joshi is how you can look me up on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, Adwait Joshi, or just look up DataSeers.
Excellent. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for the inspiration and contribution.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Can't get enough of those rebellious conversations? Do make sure you subscribe, like, and share with your friends.